also go by DT, and I'm here to talk to you about perspective. This is a concept pitch, so it's in very, very early prototyping, so bear with me a little bit. There's not a whole lot to graphically show off, but let me talk about this. What is perspective? The idea here is that this is a mystery-solving game where you play as a trio of detectives, each of which has their own foible in how they see the world and how they interact with the world. And you need to use these three detectives in tandem in order to solve mysteries. It is going to be a 3D gameplay where you are exploring a crime scene and investigating and talking to witnesses. And it is being developed on PC for both gamepad and keyboard support. Let's talk a little bit about our characters here. We don't have an artist in the team, so bear with me a little. The concept art here, but the idea is that each of these detectives can see the world in different ways, as shown here. We have the noir detective, who literally sees the world in black and white, so the game is rendered in grayscale when you're playing from the noir detective's point of view. We have the muscle, who is powerful but illiterate, and so all of the text assets are swapped out with illegible text when you're playing as the muscle. And we have the kid genius, who is very imaginative and sometimes cannot tell apart fantasy from reality. So they will see things that are not there. So for instance, the noir detective, when looking at the scene, cannot tell if that is blood or green goop. It turns out it's not blood. The muscle cannot read the text that says chef, and the kid genius sees a demon hand, which is just actually a regular hand. Each detective also has different ways in which they interact with the world. The noir detective is tall. They can see over things. They can view through high windows. The muscle is strong. They can move things around. And the kid genius is short enough to fit into tight spaces that the other detectives won't be able to get into. In terms of the feel of it, the visual aesthetic is going for a cartoonish 3D vibe, along the lines of classic PS1 game Sheep Raider, or more recently and more human-shaped, Team Fortress 2. In terms of the narrative feel, going for pretty goofy, but able to take itself seriously when it needs to, especially when dealing with dead people, along the lines of Professor Layton or Ghost Trick Rampant Detective. And in terms of gameplay, it's going for the investigative portions of Phoenix Wright, where you investigate crime scenes and talk to witnesses, but in a 3D setting, akin to the first-person basic 3D movement of Portal, with less portals. On that note of gameplay flow, the basic loop is, again, you're going through 3D areas, you're investigating, taking notes, adding this information into your hint log, which you can then use to present to people to delve further into the mystery and make accusations. The game is divided up into different stages. Each stage is intended to be somewhere between 15 and 60 minutes, with early stages being shorter and later stages being longer, and the initial launch going for having 5 stages available. As a stretch goal, it would be really interesting, I think, to be able to have a multiplayer mode where instead of switching between these perspectives, you have one person playing as each detective and having to share information between each other. That heavily depends on the amount of funding available and the amount of interest in as testing goes on. It may probably be a later update or even a sequel entry. I've got a rough timeline here, looking to have a prototype available in April that doesn't have any of the actual art assets, but just for a general feeling of it. Then a proper demo by September, which would be a vertical slice with a single completed stage with art and sound and everything. And then about a year from now, March 2027, having 5 stages available, start to finish, still working on polish at that point, going through QA, getting feedback, but getting ready for publication, which could potentially be by July of next year. And this is mostly information from the previous slides, all in one easy, convenient place. Developed in Subido, looking at a price point of probably around $20. The main things I'm looking for from publishing is funding and marketing. Funding in particular, you may have noticed the art's a little bit lacking. I am a solo dev on this, and I do programming and writing and stage design, but I am not an artist, so I would be using funding to commission art and sound assets. Thank you all for going. Let's cut to Q&A now.
I really like the idea. I like the concept with the three detectives. I think something you need to do if you want to do a multiplayer thing, co-op thing, is decide that early on, because that's going to dictate how the entire game is told and played. And it might save you a lot of time one way or another. You know, you don't want to start single player, then go multiplayer, then you might have like wasted a lot of time building dialogue boxes and whatever the hell, how are you going to tell a story?
Yes, this is true. I was imagining it as something akin to Portal 2's co-op multiplayer mode, where the multiplayer would definitely be an afterthought. In that case, I think the main focus is going to be on the single player.
I have one other. And I know, an artist or anything like that. I think one thing just to push the presentation just a little more, just on the slide itself, just push it to what you think your color scheme would be a little bit more pushed, like your font, all that stuff. Just cuts up the presentation a little bit more, but it was totally cool on the slides laid out.
Thank you.
I would say that, so like from the mechanics, you used one example of kind of like how it would play out, but it seemed like it was more to explain like the fact that there's different mechanics and how specifically I would try to change an example to what makes that mechanic compelling. What is interesting about that mechanic that you can use in a puzzle point in the gameplay, where this character can see something that means this, and then you got to figure out, because this, how does that play? Make it a little bit more of a hook, right? Something because I'm sure you've already thought of a couple ideas of why this triple mechanic, these different powers and stuff, made for an interesting gameplay, right? I did like a whole overall concept, by the way, too. I think you still had a lot to flesh out. I think it's kind of early on in your development, which is fine. I do think you probably also want to focus on, because you talked about, like, you go around, you find clues and all that kind of stuff. I would say that, pick a lane. Like, what's going to be your primary focus? Is it going to be that triple mechanic kind of thing? Or is it going to be going around and grabbing clues and stuff like that? What's going to be that focus? Because just from all the global game jams and stuff that I've done, we always talk about like MVP, minimum viable product. That kind of focus on what that one thing is that's going to really kind of set your game apart and kind of start from there. If it seems like you're talking both those directions, and me, they kind of seem like they might be separate directions. I mean, maybe they do, coalesce at some point, but like I'd probably kind of focus on which is the one that is the compelling part of a game.
Thank you. That's really good.
I did you did a really good job setting up the context of like what state of development you're in. You like coming back to that right away, seeing how these questions and like what does this look like? It was on MS-Paint. So that was a really important and good thing to do. I also thought like the multiplayer element would be really interesting. It kind of leans towards, I don't want to call you friends stuff by any means, but like got mess around, joke around, like everyone's seeing different stuff and trying to communicate with each other. But which is really popular right now. So if you're going for a commercial angle, it might be a good thing to kind of lean into multiplayer and explore that. Since you're at such an early stage, if it doesn't work, you slow down that's in single player game. So I would just encourage you to explore that a little bit.
Yes, I do think one reason I wanted to include it in the pitch was I think it would be really interesting to have a multiplayer mode. My main worry is in replayability. A lot of multiplayer games may do with having lots of replayability. And I think that with the case of having solved mysteries, it's difficult to do procedurally generated mysteries. And I worry that it would be hard to have enough content to ride that. But I do agree. I think it would be really interesting as a thing to play with friends.
Yeah, I think it matters too. Like, do you want to have more complex narrative puzzle solving, or do you want to have more perspective shifting as the core game mechanic? And I think that's something that's to be version if I can do it.
Great presentation. I love the idea of the team of detectives, and each one has a different skill set, and they all have to work together in order to solve the mysteries. I think that's great. If you ever played the game Lost Vikings, then you know Yeah, but Lost Vikings was incredible. Super Nintendo delivering. It still looked and holds up today. I encourage checking that out. Each character has a different skill of what you need in order to solve a puzzle to move on to the next area. But that was, to me, the thing of the presentation is I didn't really get what the core loop of the game was. Why do you need to solve these mysteries? What's going on? Like, what's the MacGuffin? What do you need to do? And I just wanted a few more examples of gameplay. But yeah, overall, I love the concept. I love the idea of multiplayer. Even a game like Pizza Possum, where you have, your two little possums running around, you get these power-ups that give you different skills. Like, you have to work together in order to beat the dogs and get to the next level and earn the pizza. Like, there's always that one carrot at the end that you have to strive for. So yeah, just having the whole gameplay core loop in mind in the presentation of saying, here's the problem. We got these mysteries. These guys need to solve it. Why? End of the world. Let's go. Something like that. Or just tell us what the whole point of the game is.
Sure.
Yeah, great job.
Awesome. Thank you very much.